So there are two different ways. There are two different ways that you can access your courses, right?
Mm-hmm.
The icon up here will show you all of your courses ever. All right. So fall 2020, spring 21, and as we keep going, they will all be here. Now, they will update based on the order that you've accessed them. So a course that you've accessed more recently will be near the top of your list. What we recommend doing, because all of the courses are here, if you want to use this quick icon, is to pin your courses to the top. So whichever ones you're currently working on, if it's something that you're building and you want to access it a lot, or the current semester, you'll pin it. So to pin a course, you'll just click the pin icon here. It fills in, and then the next time, like if we refresh the page now, you'll see that I have 3 pinned courses instead of just the 2 pinned courses. All right, and then if you needed to unpin it, like at the end of the semester, you can just click it and it unpins. Now the other option is if you scroll down the page a little bit, we have this My Courses widget. So the nice thing about here is that it sorts it by semester for you. So all of the courses here are on the All tab. And you can hit this to see more if you need to see all of your courses. But there is also a pinned area, so you can see specifically what your pinned courses are, and then by semester. So you'll be able to click on each semester and see your courses. All right. So one of the nice things about looking at your course down here is you get this overview for your courses. So you can see how many unread discussions are there and how many assignment submissions you have. So if you have a couple of courses and you're trying to look in or schedule your time, you could say, oh, this one has more assignments than this one. Let me go ahead and start here type. But another thing that you'll notice from these first 2 semesters to starting in summer 1 is that the courses now have a number at the front, and that's just the section number. So if you were to have multiple sections of the same course, you'll be able to tell which section you're in at all times because that lists at the top of the page. But otherwise, if you don't have multiple sections, it'll always just say section 1, and that's it.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
I know Moodle, we could not do this, but in Brightspace, if we have multiple sections of the same course, can we combine them so that we could just have one page and have all the work there? Or do you have to keep them separated?
They still have to be separate for the FERPA portion. The one nice thing here, though, is that, let me see what week we're talking about it in. Somewhere. Don't think it's not that week. Maybe we'll touch on it today. I don't see it specifically on here. Oh, grading week 6 is the quick eval tool. So the quick eval tool will let you grade assignments across sections. So like, right, if you have a section 1 and section 2 and you gave the same assignment to both of them and you just are like, I want to sit down and knock out this one assignment, you can do that for both sections.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So let's go ahead and go to a course. All right. So this is your course homepage. All right. The only thing that changes up here in this white mini bar is that now your course name is here. So if you click on this icon, it takes you back to the Brightspace homepage where we just were. If you click on your course name, it'll always take you to your course introduction page. All right. And on our introduction page are a couple things. So the first is this banner. And you have the option to change it. So you can change the image that's here if you want to put something more relevant to your class. You can customize the banner text, or you can actually get rid of the banner if you don't like it. So customizing the banner text is kind of cool because mine is actually set up so it goes to their name. So like you could change it almost every week, or you could say like it's week 1, it's week 2 if you wanted, but they do have this handy dandy tag. It's the curly braces. So not the square brackets, but the ones above those on your keyboard that are like the curvy ones with just the word first name in the middle. So it'll pull up your student's first name when they access your course. So you can default it to just say the course name here. You can do custom, which is what I've done here, or you can have none. Like if you just want the picture to be there and have the picture, you can. But hit save. So there's that. If we scroll down your course homepage a little bit, the next thing up is announcements. All right. And we'll come back to those in a second and talk about actually making announcements. If we scroll down a little bit more, we have the course faculty icon widget. And then over on the right, we have course content at a glance. Now, the course faculty widget, unfortunately, it doesn't like automatically pull from your profile at this point. So you will have to fill it out every semester. Or if you copied like one section to another section, it will copy some things over for you. But unfortunately, right now, that's not like a quick pull. So you'll have to update that each time. If you scroll down a little bit further, we have the calendar. So if you have things here, any of your due dates will automatically show up down here. If you just add special events to your calendar, your course calendar, they'll also show up down here. All right. If we go back up to this course content at a glance, now this section you won't actually do anything with directly. Everything in here automatically populates from your course as you build it. So this section here, you're not going to change in any way. It'll just pull things from your course. All right, so we come back up real quick and we talk about, let's do making course announcements, right? So every week, if you want to make a course announcement or if you have something important to show your students, here on this page, if you don't have any announcements made, it'll say create an announcement. So you can click on the create an announcement button and it'll take you to a page. It generally looks just like an email, right? You can have your headline and you enter content. All right. Now the content area, you'll see there's a couple things like you can add images, right? So you can add images directly from your computer. You can add URL images. If you have images elsewhere in your course, they're saved in your course offering files. So anytime you upload something to your course, it puts it in your course files. So if you wanted to use an image that you already uploaded somewhere else or use it again, you can come in here and find it and say, oh, that's the one I wanted. I have no idea what these are. One of the accessibility features of Brightspace is when you add an image, it'll ask you to add alternate text to describe the image. So if it's trying to relay any content, that should be present in your alternate text. If it is just a decoration, you can say, oh, this is just decorative. There's absolutely no content or anything with this picture. Oh, there we go. It's a picture of students. So here you can see it adds the picture in. And if you need to ever make your box bigger, these little arrows down here in the corner are coming up. So you can click and drag it to make the box bigger to see all of the different pieces that you have. I'm going to go ahead and delete that. One of the other cool things that you can do in a course announcement is we have this insert stuff button. So the insert stuff, you can add all different files. You'll see some areas that we've already seen. You can also add a video note. So that's where you can record yourself. The video notes are cool. Afterwards, you get a live preview of it. So right, you can see here, you have 30 minutes, but you'll click new recording. It starts going, talking. You hit stop, click new recording. You can see a preview of it if you like. And when you hit next, you can title it and give it a short description. And part of the reason you can do that is because you can actually search your video notes. So if you have multiple sections and you're like, I'm going to give an overview of the topic in my announcement, you can actually search for it on your second course and say, here's the video note that I just made. I want to add it. You can also do auto captions. So if you select the language, it'll automatically generate captions, which remember is helpful for UDL. If you have a lot of content specific language, it's still not as helpful because it doesn't pick up words like acetaminophen nicely and, things like that. But you'll hit next. It takes a second to process. If you want to wait for the preview, you can. I just hit insert and let it go, and eventually it will update, and it's fine. It doesn't take too long. Another fun feature over here is this Quicklink. So after you've built things in your course, you can actually put links to things in your course directly in the announcement. So if you're like, hey, don't forget your finals next week. Remember, I told you about it in our week 1 announcement. You can actually click on announcements and go to those announcements. You can go to content in your course and say, hey, remember, you're supposed to have done this discussion, and it'll put a link directly to the discussion. So they can't say they couldn't find it because you gave them a link to it. So several things like that. And of course, just regular text items, whatever you want to say. I'll also give a quick preview that in April, they're doing an update to the text editor bar. So these buttons are going to shift a little bit. The biggest change is that these buttons down here are going to move up into this area instead of being separated. So we have a spell check and an accessibility check. So if you wanted to make sure that your content's accessible, you can hit it and it'll give you a little overview if anything is wrong or not. There's also the option to pop it out if you just want to see it on a full screen and you want a bigger space. You can hit your button again, it goes back to normal. Down here under availability, so show start date, like if you wanted to schedule it in advance, you can say like, all right, this is actually for next week, but I'm writing it early because I'm going to be off or I'm busy that week, so you can do that. And then you do have the option to remove an announcement based on an end date. In most cases, I don't recommend removing an announcement because students like to go back and check. But the option is there if you have any use cases for it. Attachments, you can add a file. If you just want to do an audio recording, you can do so down here. Now just remember, like up here, we have insert video note. That has to be with video versus down here, you can just do an audio recording if you just want to do like podcast style. If you are going to do just an audio recording, I do recommend like in your message up here saying like, check out the attached audio just to make sure that they don't miss it. But there's that. And then there's also the option even down here for additional release conditions. So these get a little fancy, but there's lots of different things that you could do it for. So if you wanted to just send an announcement to, your kids who have poor grades and you're like, hey, reminder, here's a special announcement, this review session, something like that, you can. If you want to send an announcement to everybody who has an A and is like, awesome job, you're doing great, or whatever different possibilities you could come up with. You'll see you can do it based on so many different things. So like you could send an announcement based on people who made a post or didn't make a post and lots of things. At the end, you can hit publish. If something comes up and you're like, oh, I'm not ready to send this yet, or you need to check on something else, you do have the option to save as a draft, which we didn't have with Moodle. So that's a nice one there. And it's on the announcements tool. So you can see the status of your message. It's a draft. You can see if you have a start date selected, if you have an end date selected, and then you can actually see a preview of your message. If we go back to our course homepage, just so you can see, it still won't show in the announcement area. And to get to that announcements tool, you'll just click the down arrow. These are called context menus in Brightspace, and we'll click go to announcements tool. And that will take you to the list of all of your announcements. Now, when you do make an announcement, let's see if I have one up here. When you do make an announcement and it posts, you have the option to dismiss an announcement. So I'm going to do it with one of these general ones and not in my class. All right, this one. All right. Sorry, I should have prepped that ahead of time. All right, so I'm looking at the announcements for Brightspace right now, but the tool works the same way for your course announcements. When you see it here, it'll have this little arrow next to it, or this X next to it. So that's how you can dismiss it. Now, if you dismiss it on yours, that's just for you. It doesn't dismiss it for all of your students. They dismiss them on their own. So like if they've read it already, they can hit the X and dismiss it and say, I don't need to see that announcement right now. But they can always get back to them by going to the announcements themselves. Just like we did here by clicking on that context menu for announcements and saying announcement tool. But it will show up on their course page right there. And depending on how they have their notifications set up, you know, they may get a push notification, they may get a text message, an email that you've made an announcement. Any questions on the announcement tool? All right. Then our next one is I'm going to go over these content items a little bit. All right. So the way Brightspace works is that everything lives in its individual type of item. So assignments live on the assignments tab, and all of your assignments will be there. So if I look at my course here, I can see all of my assignments. If I go to discussions, that's where all of my discussions live. And I can see all of my discussions. All right. If we go to tools, we have, that's where like quizzes live, right, in the tools. We didn't want to put them on the navigation bar because if for some reason you had a quiz up and like the students looked at it early before you had announced it, or maybe you had one and you're like, we don't need it yet. Brightspace actually recommended not having it right on this nav bar because they've had reports in their studies about students being more anxious just with it there. So it's hidden here, but if I go to quizzes, all of the quizzes are there. I don't do a lot of quizzes. And then there's also a tool in here. But so each one of these pages is a type of tool, and all of those tool items are together. Now the content page is how you organize all of those things and how you put them together. All right. So on this content page, if I go to table of contents, this is going to be the page that mirrors Moodle the most because it's one page with a big list of all of the modules and everything that is in the course. All right, so that's the table of contents page. Now, everything that you add here, these are modules. So in Moodle, these auto-populated with us, like with the week names, or like with the dates for the week. Here, they are not going to do that the first time, so you'll have to name them yourselves. But you see, you can add a date to them, depending on what you want it to be. So like this one says it begins January 19th. So then your next week, you could set it to begin January 26th and correspond to the weeks. It sounds like a lot, but then I promise you, when you copy to the next semester, they have a fancy date offset tool. So like if you set them up one semester, the next semester, all you do is say, oh, here's my new start date, and it'll shift all of the dates for you. So that's a handy dandy tool that we will have.
Can I ask a question? How do you populate them? If you just were making a course, what buttons do you press to populate that?
So at this table of contents page, the very first thing right under it will be add a module.
Got it.
So, and all you're going to do is click on add a module. You don't have to turn editing on like we did in Moodle. You're just always in that kind of editing mode, so you can edit as you need to. But so if I go here, right, you could type whatever the name of it is. If you want to keep calling them week 1, week 2, week 3, you can do that. If you want to, I don't recommend entering actual dates because it's not going to change for you next semester, and then you'd have to go through and manually change them all, versus setting a date for the module. Like these dates, like this begins January 19th, I set the date for the module. So that way, if I copy it and I change my start date, all of those January 19th will automatically update. So don't put the date in your title, but you could put, like week 1, because that's a generic term. After you type it, you'll just hit enter. You get a note that your module is successfully added, and it takes you right to that module. So when you're in a module like this, all of these modules are the items that populate in that homepage content widget, that one that I said you didn't have to touch. So if I go back real quick and look at that, all right, you can see these are all the modules that I have. And then down at the bottom, here's that new module that I made. All right, this one. So once you've added a module, here's where you can add dates and restrictions. Once again, you just click on the text. When you highlight over anything and it turns blue, that means that you can click on it and edit it. So this has a light blue highlight, light blue highlight, light blue highlight. If you want to hide a module, you're like, I'm still working on this, I don't want my students to see it, you can change the visibility. I'm going to hide it for now so my students don't get super confused. If you're looking at this title and you're like, oh, I don't want this to be the title anymore, you can click on it, edit it, hit the enter button again to change it. We still have our context menu here. And if you scroll all the way down, you can delete your module. So if you're like, maybe I don't want this module anymore, I decided I don't need it, you could delete it. So add dates and restrictions. So a start date is when it becomes visible. So if you don't set a start date and it's made visible, it's always visible. If you wanted to say, this is the week 1, so like if you're thinking like fall, I don't want this to be visible, I'm going to make it the week before. So that way, if my students come on and they want to see week 1 to start prepping, they can. And then you can add a due date. So the due date's nice because students will get like a little handy dandy reminder, and it'll be on their calendar, hey, your week 1 items are due. So you can set a due date for the whole module. An end date. End dates are visibility dates. So if you set an end date, it's not going to be visible anymore. So I don't recommend using end dates unless you have, you know, like a bonus one or something, some sort of temporary assignment that they're not going to want to look back on or have need not to look back on for whatever reason. Right. Just afterwards, make sure you hit the blue update button. And after you hit it, now you'll see instead of just having that like add dates, it has my due date, it has my start date. And then down below it, there's still add a description. So if you wanted to give it a description and say like, whatever you're doing that week, you can. So those are the basic items for a module. All right. Now in later weeks, we're going to talk more about these buttons, upload, create, and existing activities. So upload, create means that you can say, I need to create a file, like a resource for you, or I have a link I want to share with you. A new assignment, new discussion, new quiz, new survey, all of those things, upload, create. Now, if you're transferring things in from Moodle, you might have assignments already created. You probably have discussions already created. So rather than clicking upload, create, you're going to be clicking existing activities. And you're going to say, all right, my existing activity is an assignment that I already made and transferred in. So if you click on assignments, it will take you to all of the assignments that are in your course. And you can say, all right, I want this to be in week 1. If it's not there already, it should be there from your transfer. But if you have something that you've added and you don't like it, you'll be able to click the context menu. You can actually do edit properties in place, which lets you change the name, lets you change the due date. If you have a student who doesn't need to complete it, Brightspace has something known as exemptions. So you can exempt a student and it won't deal with like the gradebook at all. You can change the visibility by checking the little eye here, right? Toggle it on and off. And then there's the completion setting and the trash can. Now the completion settings are nice and they are all defaulted to on. So a student has to do the assignment to get the check mark. If it's just like a link, they have to click the link to have it checked off. Now, the nice thing about it is that back on that home page, do you see how the circles here, like this one says 0, this one says 83.3. Those circles go off the completion setting. So by leaving it defaulted on, when you go to look at something, all right, so I haven't checked any of these yet. So if I were to go and click on one, all right, I'm in the 23-minute one. So I can go through, I can look at the items for my course. But when I'm back on that course homepage, and I go back down through my course content at a glance, I now see I have a check mark because I looked at that item. So as a student, it's nice to kind of make through that you go through and at least check everything because everybody wants to get 100% on their little circles, right? So, and then you as the instructor, actually, we'll touch upon it more later, you can actually see how long they spent on it. So like mine right here has 23 minutes because I know that the video I made in here is 23 minutes long. So if I were to go look at their course progress, oh no, I lied. I made an 8-minute video and a 15-minute video. So if I go to look at it and I'm like, well, they only spent 2 minutes on this page, I know that they didn't watch my videos, which is why I put the number of minutes in here. So it would be an easy way for me to tell on my class progress tab. But, all right, so in summary, I will say that all of the items that you make that students do, so anything that a student has to do, submit an assignment, take a quiz, post in a discussion, lives on those individual pages, right, that we talked about down here in quizzes, but you'll add them to the content area so they show up in the appropriate order, and you can say like, here's the week where you're going to do this assignment, or here's the chapter where we're going to do this assignment. And go ahead.
I have a question.
Yeah.
One of the things that I added for my courses was I recorded a lecture, like I recorded a bongo lecture and posted it there. Where would I add those recorded lectures? Is that in the same place? I didn't see a spot for something like
so that. The bongo lectures from Moodle, I have a separate document because you have to go in and get the public URL.
Okay, I know how to do that.
All right, so you'll get your public URL and then it'll be an upload create, and then you'll create a link.
Okay, what if I want to make a new one?
A new one, we're going to cover those in later weeks.
Okay.
Specifically.
Okay.
But I'll give you a heads up that it's under existing activities, virtual classroom.
Okay.
Yes, Bongo is a different name in Brightspace because they're premier partners. But virtual classroom and our video assignments in virtual classroom are Bongo.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yep. All right. So last week, remember I demoed the app, if you had a chance to watch the full video. So if you want to know like what your students are going to have direct access to on your app, when you're on the homepage and you look at this course content at a glance, that's what students are going to have the easiest access to on the app. So you want to make sure, like if you're like, oh, I want to make sure they can access assignment 1 wherever they are, and you're like, it's in week 2, or like I want it to be here. If you click on it and don't see it listed, you can say, oh, I should go back and make sure that it's on here somewhere. Because just because you made an assignment doesn't mean you added it to the content area. So that's something to look out for. Let's see. All right. So next up, we're going to go ahead and talk about the gradebook. One of the comments that we got back most from students on our survey was that they wish they could see their grades more. So that's one of the things I think that had a big influence for us in getting Brightspace, because their grades are the gradebook is easier to work with. So for you as an instructor, it's easier to set up and maintain. Now, the very first time that you click on grades, it's going to take you to the setup wizard. So the setup wizard just goes through a series of questions and asks you about your grading system. So it'll say like, are you weights or are you points? Like, do you do categories or do you do point values out of 1,000 points? Final grades. Do you want to release the calculated final grade? Do you want to automatically release the final grade? And you'll just like check the different boxes for the settings that you like. I do recommend that you check automatically release final grade and release the calculated final grade, because that's how they get a constant updated final grade item. If you don't have those checked, they won't necessarily see it until you go in and publish it after they have their first grade, or if you want to wait until they have a couple grades to go publish those items. Grade calculations, it'll ask you if you want to treat items as 0 or drop ungraded items. I recommend drop ungraded items, because if you have things like planned out in advance, so like if you have, if you have all of your assignments set up and you say treat as 0, it'll treat all of them as 0 out of that score until you get to them. So like their current grade in week 1, is going to be like a 5% if you have a lot of assignments. But so it'll ask you all of these questions, and you'll just, like I said, you won't have to hit start, because the first time you go through it, it'll just say like, here you, or I think maybe you do have to hit start the first time, but it'll default you to this page, and you can go through. And if you want to change something later, like you have the setup wizard tab, so you can come back and hit start again and go through it if you wanted to change any of your settings. You can also hit the settings button over here and go back through, and some of the questions that it asks you in the wizard are here. So like here's the thing about final, so I have repeat calculated final grade at the start of the user list. So like when I look at my students, the very first grade I see is their calculated final grade currently. So I don't have to like scroll to the end of my list. So that's just like an easy usability feature. Or unit display options doesn't have a whole lot in it. Decimal places, what do you want the students to see about their grades? If at any time you're not sure about what they mean by an item, so like grade scheme symbol, if you hit the question mark, it'll give you detailed information about it. So like this, the grade scheme symbol is usually, A, B, C, D. So like, do you want it to show that also? Grade scheme color. So if you have a good grade, they have a green. If they have a poorer grade, they have a red background, those type of items. And then calculation items, once again, you can update those here. They walk you through it in the setup wizard though. So like this is the very first question in the setup wizard. Are you a weighted person or are you a points person? Or do you want to use some special formula and do a combination of both? But so those are all the settings. I guess I can close. All right. Then you have manage grades. So manage grades is where you'd add categories. All right. So that's where you'd add your categories and say, all right. So like I added the category of discussions, of Newton Alta assignments, and of other assignments, like all these ones that have blue bars. So you just hit new and you say that you want a new category. And a new item is like an actual item here, right? So if you wanted to add them all ahead of time, you could. You don't have to add them all ahead of time. Like as you're creating items, like as you're creating discussions or creating an assignment, you can also add the grade item then. So you don't have to do all of them in advance. Next up, if you go to enter grades, that's where you will see all of your students' grade items and all the things that are calculated in their grades. There is an import and an export. So there is a way that you can import, like if you'd want to keep your grades in Excel and just update them on Brightspace for like midterms and the final, that you can do that from Excel directly. The nice thing, if you switch to spreadsheet view will let you edit all of your columns all at the same time. So like if you have a lot of things that you grade in person when we return to not hybrid, and you're like, I just want to go through and like type in all their grades for their class participation, switching to the spreadsheet view is nice because you can see like just everything is editable for everyone. Standard view, don't forget to switch back to standard view because then you won't accidentally delete somebody's grade or update something because they're not all editable at the same time then. But one of the other nice things about the gradebook is that if it is something that they did on Brightspace, it's tied to the item. So like these are discussion questions. This is the discussion that they made. So like if I was like, oh, I don't remember why I gave them an 8.5, or I don't remember why I gave this person a 6, I can click on it and it'll take me right to their assignment. And I can say, oh, I remember, here's the rubric that I did for them. and all of that. I found it to be helpful during student meetings because like if I meet with one student, I can just go through and pull all of their stuff up for any questions that they have. But any questions on the gradebook? All right. I'm sure there will be more later as you start to use it, but at least we have general overview. It's just one of those things that like you have to be in it to really like get it. So if we talk about course building approaches, so far I have found that there are, if you're starting from scratch, so you're going to be bringing stuff in for Moodle, but for video purposes, I'll briefly go over the if you're starting from scratch approach. So if you're starting from scratch, you know, and it's a course that you're like, I do have everything planned out, or like I kind of know what I like, you could go to assignments and create all of your assignments. So if you're like, oh, I know, or if you're looking to revamp a course rather than directly copy from Moodle, you can say like, I know I mostly want to have all these assignments. And so you could go through and add all of your assignments. The discussions, we are going to talk about the discussions. Those are somewhere. Week 4. And now the discussions are going to be, in my experience so far for people transferring, the discussions are the biggest thing that you have to work with from Moodle to Brightspace, just because the setup is a little different. But they do all still copy, but you could build out all of your discussions. So like you could create a forum and say, here's all my weekly discussions, and then add all the discussions that you want to have for those weeks and just build them all out in advance. And after you have all of those pieces built, all of the assignments, all of the discussions, all of the quizzes, you can go to content and add them all to the weeks where you want them. So like if you have all your modules made, you'll just hit that existing activity button and go to assignments and say, here's the assignment I want in that week. And it'll just add it to the bottom. Now, the other option, if you're more like, oh, I'm not sure I want to build it out that far in advance, I'm more as a do as you go type person, your option is to just go to content and start building linearly as you would do it for the course. Like add your first module and say, all right, here's my week 1. We're going to go over more content building next week, but like, you know, say, all right, the first thing I'm going to do is make a document for them to review about the material. So like, I'm going to make that first. So here I'm in content. Let me make this item. I can type. We'll talk more about these next week. They're fancy templates. Ooh, but make it and then say, all right, now that I've made that, after they review that piece of content in week 1, the next thing I'm going to do is have them make the discussion or like make a post about themselves in a discussion. So now I'm going to go to discussion and make it. So you can build that way as well. Now for my Moodle transfers, what I have found to be best so far is to kind of take that first approach, not the linear approach, but the first approach, and like go to assignments and say, here's all the assignments that Moodle copied over, and check those settings, kind of go through them and say, is this how I want it to look? Is this how I want it to be? And just kind of just double check them. Assignments have generally transferred over very smoothly. So this one will be a quick go through to sit here and say, let me check, let me go through and just check the settings. If you want, you can even just switch to your student view. So like, here's my assignment. You'll notice it's a different setup than Moodle, but you can see like the name. And like I said, we're going to talk more about content items and things later. But you could even just, like I said, switch to a student view quick and say like, does this look how I want it to look for my students? Just to give them a once over. So remember, here's the view as student item. And then go to discussions and do the same thing. Now, like I said, discussions are going to come over wonky because this has forums and then it has topics. And in Moodle, every discussion that you have is going to come over as its own forum. So you'll have a forum for each one where you may not need a forum for each one. Like my questions down here initially, like this was its own forum, like its own big area. So those are going to come through a little bit. And as we move those, and if you edit them or rearrange them, it'll adjust things on your content page, but we'll go over those more specifically. So now, before we run out of time, we'll go over the backup process. So backing up your course and then putting it in Brightspace. All right. So from your course, once you're in there, whichever course it is, you're going to hit your course management gears icon. And then under the course settings column, you're going to hit backup. All right. Under the backup settings, if you're just backing everything up, you can hit jump to final step and be done. If you're like, there's some stuff I don't want to transfer, or like it's older, I'm done with, you'll hit the next button. And then you can go through. And up here at the top, you'll notice it says select all or none. So if you're keeping most things, you can leave it on all and go through and uncheck what you don't need. If you're only going to bring a couple things, you can hit the none button and then go through and check them off. Just remember the heading has to be checked in order to select the items in that area. So I almost recommend unchecking all of your discussions and just building them from scratch and doing like a copy paste. I think that will be easier than actually rearranging everything in Brightspace, at least for the discussions only. But when you're done, you'll hit next. It'll double check all of your settings for you. You basically just keep clicking through till you get to perform backup, and you hit perform backup. This one should be quick. It'll hit continue. You may get a warning about roles. If you get a warning about roles, you can just hit continue and ignore it. But your course backup area is here, and then down below that, you'll see the backup. It says Moodle. It says, oh, well, like your course name, and it'll have the date and time that you made the backup. You'll download the file. After you download it, do not try and open it on your computer. It will not open outside of an LMS. So if you try to click on it and open it, you'll get a message that's like, nope, hate you, can't do it, sorry. Now, to upload that course to Brightspace, once you're in your course, you'll click Content, and then Table of Contents. And you'll see right on that page, you have a big Import Course button. So it'll come up with two options, Copy Existing Course or Import Course Package. So Copy Existing Course is what you're going to use in future semesters when you want to copy a Brightspace course that you already have. But to get your Moodle course, you'll do Import Course Package. And then you will just, if you're using Chrome or Edge where it's down here at the bottom, you can just click and drag it up into your box. Maybe. There you go. If you're using something like Mozilla, you'll want to click the upload button, or on any of the other browsers, you can do it. You can go and find it, click on it, click open. And then if you didn't do it in Moodle, or maybe you did copy all of your discussions and then you got here and you're like, no, I don't want to copy all my discussions, you could do advanced options. Import all, obviously, brings exactly what you brought from Moodle. The advanced options will let you pick and choose. So it'll convert your file and take a second. There is a nice option here that, like, if you have a big course, like if your Moodle backup took a while, I recommend doing this option, because then you can say, send me an alert when it's done. And so like you could leave the page and then it'll come up with a little alert here. So you can go, because depending on how much is in your course, I think we've had 1 or 2 take like 10 to 15 minutes so far, so it could take some time. But then it's like the same steps, like it's all the check boxes for all of your items, and at the end you will hit import and your course will be there. I'm going to cancel it because I don't actually want to import over my course.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So later on today, if I'm playing around, can I go and copy my course from last fall and then just put it in the space that it's on Moodle from last fall, just to play with it? Will the students be able to see that?
No. So when you're actually looking at your courses on the home page, if you go down to the My Courses widget, so let's see. So everything from fall 2020 currently says closed.
Okay.
So the courses automatically open a week before the course start date. So students will have access to your course a week beforehand. But then I think we have them set to close 2 weeks after and so like they can wait, it gives everybody time to get their grades in, they can go back and look at stuff, but after that they are closed. So they won't be able to get into them anymore. So you are all good there. Alrighty. Anything else?
No, I think I'm all set and ready to get on and figure it out.
Yes. So next week we're going to do more about content creation. So more like that file page where I did like the quick show with the super cool templates. And then managing course files, which course files are nice if you're kind of starting from scratch, because you could, if you have like a folder on your computer that says like, these are all of my course files, like these are all of my Math 155 courses, you can upload them to your course all at once. So fun things there. But otherwise, that's all I have.
Okay, thank you very much. Sounds good.
All right. See you, Chris.
Have a great week. Bye-bye.